$50 million under budget, the largest ever investment in the energy infrastructure in the BVI. But with all of this good news, what residents in the BVI want to know is, does this mean that there will be no more power outages? And to answer this question, as well as others, right here on The Big Story, we have the man who has described this development as a big deal, the General Manager of the BVIEC, Mr. Leroy Abram. Let's begin with the significance of this $50 million investment, this Phase 5 power development program that has been executed. How significant is this investment for the territory?
This is, as I stated yesterday, this is a big deal for the BVI. It actually signals a whole paradigm shift with regards to energy production in the territory, because it not only shuts down our Longbush facility, the Parkwood Pond facility in the next few weeks will be the sole means of energy production for the entire territory, with the exception of Anegada, which isn't connected to the grid. It's a sizable investment in terms of costs. The volume of power in excess of 25 megawatts of power being installed at one time. Discussions are now taking place for the installation of a fourth unit, reinforcing our transmission between Parkwood Pond and the Longbush facility. So it's a big deal. It would definitely usher in a new level of efficiency and service to the residents and visitors to the territory.
Yes, residents in the territory are excited that this has been done. It shows that the government is putting its money where its mouth is. But does this mean that residents don't have to worry about frequent blackouts anymore?
The unfortunate thing is that BVIEC can never completely guarantee complete freedom from outages. Outages occur from a myriad of issues, from generation to wildlife, to vegetation, and even man-made, with persons interacting with our infrastructure that causes the power to go off. What we can confidently guarantee is that we won't be load shedding anymore, and load shedding comes from the fact of a deficit in generating capacity, which affects us having to perform our planned and unplanned maintenance. So now that we have a significant amount of reserve capacity, we're now better able to get the maintenance activities on our equipment accomplished very timely, both planned and unplanned. When they occur, we're able to start up additional generators, which are just sitting there, and in a very short period of time, your power can be restored in instances such as those.
And quickly, this fourth generator that you spoke of, how quickly do you expect to get that into the territory?
Right now, we're in the phase of discussing the contract requirements with Wärtsilä, the manufacturer. If those can be completed within the next month or two, and we're able to ink that agreement, based on their schedule in terms of when, because these units don't just sit there, they have to be actually constructed from scratch. So whenever they can actually fit that into their production portfolio to get it constructed, what I did indicate to the government, from the date that it lands in the territory, more than likely sometime in 2018, it would take approximately 8 to 9 months for installation. As we've made a lot of the preparations, we've incurred a lot of the preparations under this expansion in terms of the engine foundation and some of the ancillary equipment that would be necessary for the unit to be functional.
All of this is a glory story, something that we all are happy about, but there is a bottom line, the dollar and cents. You borrowed in excess of half of that money from the Social Security Board. How are you doing financially? Because you have to repay this loan within a given time frame, and I'm sure that there is another loan that you're also still not completed. How are you handling this?
And let me add to that, remember that there are the monies owed by the government in excess of $13 million for electricity costs.
Yeah. So when we sat down and we look at Phase 5, which was necessary to get us to this point and stage for us to provide the level of service that everyone needs in the territory, we looked at what level of debt we would be able to comfortably service. And that level of debt was $35 million. Social Security was able to give us unbeatable terms in reference to that 35 millions, irrespective of the 6 other entities that competed very vigorously to provide us with that financing. And we're very pleased to them to offering those terms. We are currently still paying off for our Phase 4 expansion. That was a 15-year facility. The Phase 5 expansion is another 15-year facility that has to be paid, so there's an overlap of approximately 5 years between these two facilities being serviced. So at this particular point in stage, it's very difficult because 8 months out of the year, we have to service debt. As the chairman rightfully mentioned, the country is rapidly growing. In the next 4 to 5 years, we need to be making preparations likewise to expand again. We need to find a new site and start to develop for a new power station.
Which means more money to
Which
borrow.
means more money to borrow and debt to be serviced. The corporation has always, since we became, I think we were the second government entity in 1979 to become a statutory body, we've always managed our financial affairs very prudently, such that we're never been able to be a strain on the on the parent government at any point in stage. So we've been very prudent in the way how we handle our financial affairs, and under no circumstances we want that to change.
Okay.
We're in discussions currently, as the Premier mentioned a few weeks ago. The government currently owes us in excess of $13 million. I won't disclose what the real figure is, but it's in excess of $13 million. And we're currently in discussions with regards to a payment plan, because that's very important. The government is is the sole largest customer to the Bviec Electricity Corporation. And as anyone who understands business, if your number one customer owes you, it significantly affects your ability to handle your financial liabilities and commitments on a daily and monthly basis.
So there's another way that I know that you're going to be getting rid of some expenses that you incur, and that is by cutting off the rental of, I think, 4 units that you have in Long Bush.
Yeah, so the rental units came about due to the fact of the deficit in generating capacity. We had virtually no reserve capacity prior to, in the last 3 years, in order for us to conduct our planned and unplanned maintenance. So unfortunately, that was an additional expense that the corporation had to incur to rent units to give us a little bit of a buffer. So we rented approximately 4 megawatts of power, which was situated at Long Bush, to assist us with issues and to take into account, because as I said, every house that is constructed, and believe it or not, is right down to the level of the additional TV you put on your house. Every addition in electrical equipment, we naturally have to be able to supply that load.
Getting rid of those engines
would definitely reduce some of the operational expense on the organization. And I would be one of the happiest persons when they leave the island, because that has been quite a significant expense, as you can imagine.
And the community of Long Bush are going to be the happiest, probably bringing out buckets of roses to surround the compound, because you're getting rid of some noise nuisance that has been there for decades.
For decades, the Long Bush facility has been there from inception of the organization, from when it was the electricity, ice and cold stove. Electricity, ice and cold stove. Okay. So for quite a few decades, the Long Bush facility has been there generating electricity. This once again signals a paradigm shift, because in the next few weeks, after we finalize testing at the new Henry Wilfred Freddie Smith power station, right? That would then usher in the rental sets moving, and the one operational unit at Long Bush, which is Unit 11, it would be retired very gracefully once and for all. No more generation.
Speaking of cutting costs and efficiency, the representative from Wartsila who was there, he spoke about the necessity of maintenance and training. What's the plan for this going forward to ensure that it doesn't cost the BVIEC more in the long run?
So training, it starts with training and it ends with training. Training is very important to us, and we recognize that. And the capacity building requirements with regards to our existing personnel is very important. What we have done to ensure that we get the benefits from the Phase 5 expansion, recognized, as I said, is new technology. It's a whole new unit. and to fast track the learning curve in association to the facility, we engaged the services of a, well, not an engine manufacturer, but more or less a EPC contractor similar to Wärtsilä. The only difference between Wärtsilä and BWSC is the fact that BWSC doesn't actually manufacture the equipment, but they have the same level of resources with regards to installation. So we've engaged them in a technical services initiative to provide, so there's 3 persons here providing that necessary technology transfer and improving our operations and maintenance practices at the facility, and more or less updating them and bringing them to industry best practices.
Okay.
So that's A. B, we're in the final stages with Wärtsilä to put in place a training agreement for the next 5 years where our personnel will be trained, have Wärtsilä training, ultimately to become Wärtsilä certified technicians in reference to the facility. So with the BWSC team being here, that's daily on-the-job training, capacity building, and it will be reinforced or complemented with the Wärtsilä training agreement, which will be signed very shortly.
Along with this big handing over, you guys have renamed the Puckwood Pond power station after a man that I learned of for the very first time yesterday, and I have a whole lot of respect for him, having heard. Tell me, how did this go down?
Well, it was a no-brainer, as we would say at the end of the day. The new facility was being finished to commemorate such a significant event for the territory. The question was asked, well, how can we really commemorate an event such as this? And the foremost idea was we should rename the facility. And right off the bat, well, the only person we could rename this facility after is Henry Wilfred Smith, better known as Freddie. An amazing individual, absolutely amazing individual. His work ethic is unparalleled to anyone, I think, in the world. During his tenure at Bviec, you see, a lot of us used to wonder if Freddie used to sleep. I still think it's questionable whether he does, based on the long hours that he put in. And that went on for many, many years. His stamina is something I don't think much young individuals can compare to.
Peter, the thing about it is that Freddie is the brother of the premier of the territory, and Freddie come and get something that significant named after him before the premier.
It says a lot, especially of a man who is, I've learned, he's self-taught. That's a huge deal. That's a wow factor, and it should inspire a lot of us. I can't let you go, Mr. Abram, without asking about that. It was like for about half a day blackout that happened back in March. Has your investigations revealed what was the source of
yes, Monday, March 20th. And what our investigations revealed was that was the same day that we actually put online the third unit, Unit 10, the third new unit. So essentially the equipment, the bus, I'm not too sure if you went on the tour yesterday.
Yes.
But the 34.5 kV bus that the unit was feeding into, now that it was extended, and that volume of power from the 3 units, that was the first time all 3 units were online at the same time, delivering that level of power. There was a relay that was set, unfortunately it was an oversight, that the relay value wasn't increased to accommodate that volume of power.
Okay.
So recognizing that volume of power was going by, the relay did what it was supposed to do, which was it sensed that there was a abnormal condition, and then opened the breaker. And in opening the breaker, it separated all of that amount of power that was being generated on the new side of the extension and shut the whole system down, because the other 2 units that was running at the time was unable to carry that amount of load.
The building out that's being done by the BVIEC, of course, with some 3% of the territory's energy supply coming from renewables. Renewables have to be a part of that mix. So what's the plan there?
We are looking at a very comprehensive approach with regards to energy production. Base load capacity will always come from fossil fuels, unfortunately, because that's just how it is. So the Puckwood Pond Power Station, and likewise our next power station, wherever it is would be the base load facility. Renewables complement that base load capacity.
Okay.
So we're looking at it from a comprehensive point of view where the Poplar Pond facility would operate on light fuel, diesel fuel. The new power station, we want it to be able to operate on gas, whether
Okay.
LPG or natural gas, if the economics for natural gas at that point and stage, work out in reference to our formulas at that point and stage, so we have some fuel diversity. And then renewables would then come in reference to, as I said, complementing. Renewables, unless it is hydro or steam from or geothermal, can't be utilized as base load. So what we're looking at initially is solar PV, and unfortunately there's a variable entity to the renewables that are solar, which unfortunately doesn't make it base load.
Right.
But at least we'll be able to have a much diversified portfolio going forward comprehensively in terms of
Great.
energy production in the territory. We've been discussing with a private developer a proposal submitted by them for a small utility scale project of around 2 megawatts solar PV. If we're able to reach to agreement on that, that would actually be a quote unquote flagship project in renewables for the territory. So we're hoping to see if we can, we've been at it for the better part of approximately 3 years now. So if we can, definitely the commercial element of it is very important because,
the dollars
and cents. So if we're able to achieve, as I said, agreement on the commercial entity, and we've already established that the project is viable from a technical standpoint. We've done our technical due diligence on it. So if we're able to achieve some agreement on it, hopefully that will be the flagship project, which should be online between maybe early 2018. 2 megawatts of solar PV on the western end of the island. We're also actively looking at Anegada, which, as I keep saying, is not connected to the grid. And the cost of production of power in Anegada is actually subsidized by the corporation, because the cost to produce power is much more expensive than the parent grid. But the customers in Anegada pay the same rate as everyone connected to the parent grid. So the difference, that delta, is subsidized by the organization. To remove that subsidy, renewables would be perfect for that installation, for that sister island. So right now we're in the discussions with the government to acquire some property which is right adjacent to the power station in Anegada. And once we're able to acquire that property, we're simultaneously reviewing the technical aspects of having a hybrid, renewable energy hybrid system, small amount of diesel power generation, and probably solar and wind complementing that. So the small amount of diesel power generation will make sure, as I said, remove the intermittency of the renewables, the wind and the solar, and the wind and the solar producing most of the capacity for Anegada.
Thank you very much for joining us right here on The Big Story, Mr. Abram. It was very good having you. And so with that, you heard it right there from the General Manager of Bviec, Leroy Abram. Major headway being made in terms of investment in the energy infrastructure of the territory, and serious talks are taking place as it pertains to including renewables into the energy mix. And with that, we leave it right here on The Big Story. Do check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and jtvlive.net.